Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our On Point webinar series. We will be discussing ways to create a future-ready, high-performing organization. I'm Kirsten Petrus with Oak Street Funding, and today we welcome two guests from Wipfli, a top 20 consulting firm. First, Paul Lally, Principal and National Head of Wipfli's Wealth and Asset Management Industry Group, and Paul Leroue, the CMO and Principal at Wipfli. They are leaders in working with companies to transform them into high-performing organizations, and in doing so, create an engaging group and increase market value of that business. We're pleased to also get the perspective of Rick Dennen, our Chief Corporate Banking Officer and CEO of Oak Street. Not only as a business owner, but also from the seat of someone who has seen thousands of business enterprise organizational systems and operating systems, some of which have grown to make those companies be sought after employers, partners, and sources of best business practices. And before we get started, I do want to give you an opportunity, Paul Leroue, to tell everybody about yourself being the CMO at Wipfli.
Wipfli is an advisory and accounting firm that has offices all across the country. It's a unique job. Being a marketer in this particular industry. We work with the middle market a lot, really building high performance organizations, right? And we work on both the strategy and advisory side and on the compliance side, both of those equally as part of our business model. Got to keep people safe on the compliance and the financial risk side, and you got to challenge them and build high performing organizations on the organization side. So that's kind of what we do at Wipfli. But we were founded in Wisconsin, and we've over 90 plus years have transformed a couple different ways just to meet the growing needs of businesses and organizations. We work with about 80,000 clients, small businesses and medium-sized businesses across the country.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Paul Lally, you've been in the wealth management space for most of your career. Tell us.
I'm not saying how long.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing here with us today and at Wipfli.
Sure. So my role at Wipfli, I've been doing this, I'll just say, for decades. Yeah. Okay. But I had the great opportunity to join Wipfli 4 years ago. And as a firm, we go to market by industry. So construction, manufacturing, distribution, retail. One of the largest industry groups is our financial services industry. And as a firm, we saw a void. I think everybody in this room would agree that financial services firms are getting bigger. And they're moving now from a lifestyle to trying or figuring out, how do I run a business, and then how do I take a business and create a high-performing business out of that? So we made a strategic decision about a year and a half ago to create an industry exclusively focused on the wealth and asset management sector. So my team is about 200 professionals, covering the gamut of advisory and service and solutions that Paul mentioned. And our goal every day we wake up is how do you grow, transform, and then what most business owners want to do is perpetuate one of their proudest achievements into the future of being their business. And how do I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. They do. Everybody that we serve in the insurance space, wealth management, even the CPA firms, I mean, they do need some guidance in this. So it's great that there are resources like your teams to provide that. I would be remiss if we just didn't take a moment before we got into the questions that were submitted. Rick, I want to just ask you a question. Today, Russia invaded Ukraine. The stock market was down, it's up, it's down, volatile, right? To say the least. Crude oil, gas prices are going up. And just two words, if you could sum it up in two words, it's just global disruption. Before we get into the questions today about how people can do some things to better their businesses, any perspective on what business owners should do to mitigate this disruption as it might affect them?
Probably what comes to mind for me is, one of the hottest topics right now is inflation. That recently just got supported, I think, either this morning or yesterday at the 7% rate. And when you think about that, energy was 2% of that, core products were 2%, core services 2%, and food was 1%. So, immediately you think about energy and crude prices, which went up and over $100 a barrel today, first time since 2014. So I know it's back down now where that settles in, but energy prices, energy inflation is going to continue to go up, but also your commodity type products. So you think about 7% being too high, and then the Fed's impacting that by interest rate offsets to kind of slow things down. Well, that's going to be accelerated. So right now there's 7 interest rate changes being built into 2022. The meetings and what's expected in the market, I think, is 6.5 changes. So that's roughly about 1.75 to 2% of rate changes for the year, which could be impactful for a lot of businesses and how that might impact it. But, things are settling down a lot different than what they were at the beginning of the day. And I suspect that will continue. But some of the inflation's going to accelerate even more now.
Well, and as we said the last time you and I were together, preparing for these rate changes, keeping your eye focused on the long-term return for your business investments, right? It's a balance and a blend.
Yeah.
It could sound pretty scary today, but if you sit back for a moment and really try to think, is this enough to stop the direction of my company? I'm going to go with it's possibly not a no for the businesses we work with quite a bit. But things
if you think about interest rates, even if they go up 2%,
mm-hmm.
They're at an all-time low today.
Right.
So even if they go up 2%, and that's your cost of funds, if you compare that to your cost of equity, which is, 25 to 40% in a lot of different cases, it's not going to alter your strategy, in my opinion. Some of the commodities type businesses may be impacted more with their costs, with 30% increases versus a 1 to 2% increase in interest rate. So I think to your point, I agree with you.
But that I want to add on to, I think for most business owners now, because we're just coming out of a disruptive event. I mean, we're coming out of COVID, and now what happened today is it's incumbent upon the business owners now to really plan. We talk about strategic planning, or the conversation today being future-proofing your business. Having no plan is a plan. The plan is you have no plan. So something's going to happen. So voluntarily, involuntarily. And the plans you need to create is less aspirational and more action oriented. And because it's great to say our firm's going to keep growing, or we'll keep doing these things, we'll keep getting better. But you have to address the what ifs. And right now, I think contingency planning for a lot of businesses around the what if this happens. Now, sometimes they think they're wasting our time. Well, I'm never going to use this plan. But the need to change and need to react so quickly now, how things change. I mean, things change so quickly. You can't just do that ad hoc. You got to have that what if. Now, no one can predict today, but to have these what if scenarios planned out so you can react quicker, because most of the firms we talk to, they're professional services. They work with people. So they're going to need to be able to address it themselves and then help address it with their clients as well.
Great point. Action oriented is critical, right? We all thought we had plans. Those plans made sense until the plan had to contend with a pandemic that put us all in our homes for almost a year for some people. Paul Leroue, and until we sort through the Pauls, I'm going to use
Paul squared.
I can take another name for the day if you want.
Let's get started though with some conversations about how to take those actionable steps, right? So what makes a high performing organization?
So Paul and I have been working on this together for several years now. And so, we'll probably both say it differently, but, we've identified kind of 7 themes that we think flow through, what creates a high performing organization. And most of this was born out of talking to our clients who said, it's more of a holistic viewpoint than 1 or 2 things, right? That holistically, all these 7 or 8 things, when they work together, get you to the place. So, I'll give you a few of them, and then I'm sure Paul will give you. Building a powerful vision and plan. We have people that we work with who don't have a vision, or they have a vision and no plan, or they have a plan and no vision. So I would say, that's an important element. Thinking and being a transformational leader, which is very different. There's a very different leadership style that works today than worked 10 or 15 years ago. And so we spent a lot of times talking to leaders about how to have a transformative leadership style and how to integrate that and develop leaders at every level of the organization. That's really super important. We spent a lot of times talking about brand. How do you differentiate your brand? How do you make it different in the marketplace? What are your uniques? What are your differentiators? Are you talking about that in a way that the market responds? And so those are just 3 or 4 of them that we've been working on, and I'll let Paul touch on a couple of them. And this whole philosophy that we've been talking about over time is what we call how to keep your business in prime, right? So if you think about an athlete when they're in prime, they're at their peak. Think about your business being in prime. What does it look like to be in prime? Not just to be in it, but to maintain it and stay in it, right? Because you can go out of prime really quick. If you're an athlete, you might have 2 prime years. Well, if you run a business, you don't want to have 2 prime years. You want to have 10 prime years. And so we spent a lot of time kind of talking about business prime. So I'll let you, Paul, because you probably want to add.
Yeah, so prime, where you have the components of prime, but when we think about what is a prime organization, what is a firm and its prime? Well, that firm or organization, it's at its most viable, stable, sustainable, profitable, which for business owners, it gives them choices. It makes it its most transferable, at its most highest value. It opens up further growth opportunities. And just to touch on, the other
we referred to that here as we were growing as institutionalizing the
well,
business
I was just going to say the first decision firms have to make is, and these, there's not a right or wrong answer. It's a personal decision, but a lot of times firms will confuse it. Am I building just a really good lifestyle for the owners of the firm, which generates great income for ourselves and we have a good time doing what we're doing? Or am I actually trying to build a firm? Because at the end of the day, every business is going to transition. Transitioning a lifestyle is a little harder than transitioning a business. But just to touch on some of those other components is you have to have invested stakeholders. And you have to have not just a leadership team believing in this future or this vision. Your staff has to believe in it. They have to be aligned. Your vendors, your accounting firm, your bank, your law firm, your customers, clients, they got to want to see you succeed in doing that. And then we're talking around then financial confidence. It's amazing. We predict things. We want to predict them and we want to look out. But when we talk to a lot of business owners, they see how their business is doing today. And they're saying, okay, this is what my business is worth today. Or this is what the real question is, are you financially confident in that business as it goes forward? And how you led off the conversation, Rick, is in financial services, there's a large segment of the financial service market that is correlated to the performance of the market. So the business goes, so as you institutionalize, how are you buffering against the correlation in the market? You can't do it 100% for a lot of firms, but you can think about what else can I be doing to buffer and keep my firm viable doing that.
One of the questions that came in though, and I think this makes sense, do I need a mission statement, and let's add vision statement, for my insurance agency? And I'm going to make an assumption that this is someone that probably has 3 or 4 employees, not 100, not 2,000. Is there benefit for a business that size to have a vision? Is
it a lifestyle business or is it an institutionalized business? And I would say for a lifestyle business, do you have to have one? Maybe, maybe not. For an institutional, if you're trying to go, and I always think of strategy as like, what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? And your strategy is how do you get from A to B? So if you have that institutionalized approach to what you want to accomplish in your business, absolutely. I think you need the, mission, vision, values, as we talk about it. And those can evolve over time as your business evolves. But it's good to have, I think, a mental mindset to align bankers, lawyers, everybody, employees. So
if you do it at 4 people, when you get to 400 people, you will have mastered the discipline, right? So it doesn't really matter what size you are. It's starting that discipline really early on. Plan ahead, look ahead, think about a future state. Be able to call audibles. Like we all called audibles in our business in the last 2 years. Some people called audibles this morning.
Yeah.
Your ability to be agile and build that kind of model is easier if you have a plan. If you're starting from scorched earth every day and you're trying to be agile and you're trying to call an audible, that's called chaos, right? That's where you don't want to be.
Yeah, and I also think too, my father was a very successful in construction for many years. And when I started my firm years ago, I asked him, I said, Dad, what's the key? When you're a business owner, he goes, your first hire, you're now a business owner because somebody else's livelihood is dependent upon you. So it's critical. And as Paul said, you have 2 people, Rick, 3, 4, you get to 4. You have to know where you're headed because there's other people relying on you that they're confident in where you're headed with the business.
Yeah. I'm going to say before you go on too, another comment was, when you talk about these pillars of success, you guys have, what's your acronym that you guys use?
Prime?
Yeah, Prime. But I would say, as we have transitioned from, a piece of paper to, going through 3 different financial ownerships to a strategic, I would say the most difficult part of that prime was keeping your employees focused as if they're owners, right? So how do you do that as you continue to add and you go through 3 or 4 different ownership changes? It's like that, I'll call it engagement of your employees. You've got to maintain.
Over time, people just become naturally misaligned in the various components. And to be able to transition or maximize value or find and attract and retain good people nowadays is a conversation we are having. It is, sometimes it's like, a marriage. You got to step back and go, are we really still aligned in our core, or where are we misaligned? But knowing where that misalignment is to get realigned.
Well, and that's such a perfect transition because you basically answered this next question, but someone submitted it, so I want to give it its due. It did say, with the changes in motivation factors amongst employees, the drive of employees in general and younger ones, how do I keep them aligned?
We're dealing with a 4-generation workforce for the first time in our history. First time in our history, we've had 4 generations working together. That causes problems just by nature, right? You're leading people that are the same age as your kids. And so that's very, very different for us as leaders and of organizations to have to do. So, when we talk about having a powerful vision and having invested stakeholders, it's giving your team a part to play in your success and rewarding them for that part, right? And I think we forgot about that along the way, that some of our business success has been because of our individual success for sure, but we forgot that a lot of people that got us there are the people that we need to involve more in our future, right? Bring us more together. So we really push that invested stake. That's why we call invested stakeholders. These are all the people in my organization, outside my organization, to help me make my business successful.
Yeah, and you think about that too, is a lot of our, the 4 generations, the boomers, the Xers, the Ys, the Zs, keep going on and on now. We all communicate differently. And it used to be, probably as a leader, I'll tell you just enough you need to know to do your job. But now you look at it and you say, there's a mistake thinking the next generation isn't as productive. They're not as engaged. They just work differently now.
Yeah.
And I think as business owners, we need to be able to communicate and be more transparent in our communication. Yeah. I won't tell you everything I'm thinking. I'm not going to lie to you, but I will communicate better. And I think that's key with this driving these generations.
Yeah, this is a generation that has defined work-life balance. And I know that's hard for us sometimes as a major priority in their life, right? And I came from the boomer generation. I can tell you, we didn't have work-life balance, right? Yeah. It was work. and
that is your balance.
Right. Balance was gone. So I honor that as a real opportunity for us to get more people involved and understand that that's just going to be part of the game going forward, right? We have to think about different things like gig workforces, flexible time off, allowing people to work less than 40 hours if that works for them. Like, what's their 100% week? We can figure that out as business leaders. We just didn't have to until now.
That's a cultural mind shift to engage the next generation, because they are approaching everything differently. It doesn't mean it's any less valuable. It's just different.
And I don't just think it's the 20s and 30s that are, the 40s and 50s are now thinking differently.
Yeah.
But, we've talked here and we stand up in meetings and say that work is not the most important thing. That your family is. Yeah. And there may be other things, religion or whatever else may be more important as well. And so now it's like, put your money where your mouth is. And you've said that, but we've got to figure out work-life balance, because you still have the same requirements and expectations at work, but yet you can get a good quality of life while working at home and still be productive. But there's a trust issue there too.
Yeah, lead to outcomes, don't lead to hours, right? I think hours were our benchmark, especially in the CPA world. I know hours are our benchmark, right? But at the end of the day, what do we really want? We want our clients to be raving fans of our work, and that's outcome-based thinking. And I think the more that we do outcome-based thinking, we get out of this mode of that every hour is important. Right. What I really care about at the end of the day is my clients come back next year and the year after and the year after and the year after, and that I'm counting the higher percentage of tenured clients I have every year. That's what I want to. That's a proven track record of success.
So I think this trust and the output, there's a lot of people who are very, very good at being independent, working remote at the dining room table or their home office or what it is. But when you are doing that as an organization, keeping people aligned with the mission, vision, values of the company, what are some methods of communication or what's some of the ways to get to a prime level of doing that too?
I think, well, some of the things we've had to do this as our firm. I mean, when COVID hit, we had to mobilize 3,000 people in 7 days to go fully remote. It's when COVID first started, every conversation was a management meeting, was a management conversation. Where's revenue? What are you doing? What clients are you working on? And then you step back and that becomes just frustration. So what we found, we now have weekly stand-up meetings where it's just a half hour. People get on the phone and just talk about the business. Just talk about, hey, what are you seeing this week? What's the gossip and rumors you're hearing? It brings everybody together. And in my group, I passed a rule: no more off video. If you're on the call, you're on video, because I said if I'm sitting in a conference room, it'd be like putting a blue dot in front of your face. We want to see you. We want to engage. We're doing scrum calls, which are just on clients, just 15-minute zap-ins. Hey, what's going on? We don't need to get into detail. Just catch us up. We're getting out a little bit more. We are encouraging happy hours again. And getting, because
you always have though, Paul.
Well, I lead the happy hours. That's why I encourage them. But
virtual, in person.
No, but we have associates who have started with us who have never met their other associates.
Yeah.
So it's really bringing everybody together once a week, not just to talk about business, but talk about work on the business, not just about working in the business.
We do check-in calls where we call someone and just for 5 minutes, what's going on? How you doing? Nothing about work, right? What's going on in your life? Anything we can help you with? Anything you need? There's to your point, there's an intentionality that you have to take now, right? We're all fatigued from Zoom and Teams. So I'm a little afraid, if you look at the numbers, the research is showing that people are not as engaged and not as connected, and therefore feel not as connected to the culture. So we have to come up with some new methods for that, right? There has to be some intentionality to correct that, because the early research coming out of COVID is a little stark around that.
How do you establish those and still connect when the latest stat I read is 3% of people right now want to be back full time, which is 5 days a week? 3%, which is a pretty small number.
Yeah.
So it's going to evolve, I think, over the next year or two. I don't think anybody could write a book today and say, this is how it's going to work best.
But you have to be agile. You have to be so agile now. And I think each organization is different. We have our way of doing it. You folks have your way. There's no best practices of doing it. Everybody's figuring it's what's working for you, and keep testing. But don't grasp onto it and say we won't change the way. You got to be agile right now.
Upper as well as the staff have to be agile as people are trying to figure this out.
Yeah,
it's got to go both ways.
I would say relentlessly communicate. I do something called a Friday flash report. Every Friday, I send out a flash report to the entire staff and say, here's what went on during the week. Because part of it is we're not together, so we're not aligned, right? It doesn't feel like we're one community. So you have to emphasize these points of building community and alignment again. And we just have to lean into it, right? I think, to your point, there'll be different strategies for different people, but don't sit back and don't not do it, right?
So to your point of the Friday debrief, maybe that's a good first tip for this next question. It said, we tried a performance system, operational system before COVID, threw it out the window. Makes sense. How can I get them back on track?
So we use a 90-day pulse period evaluation of goals. We just give people 90 days. In the next 90 days, what are 3 to 5 things you can do as an individual for the business? And we focus on sort of the micro part of it versus the macro part of it. I think some performance systems are based on once a year, right? Once a year, you have a performance review. I think if you're measuring 90-day outputs, 90-day pulse periods, it's closer in. People feel like they're a part of it, and you can be very goal oriented.
We have 2 coaches. Everybody has a coach. No matter what level they're at, you have a coach. You have a performance coach that is there for you 24/7 on call, and you have a growth coach. Which serve 2 different functions. It can't be the same person, but it gives you that person to call and say, hey, I need to bounce this off to you. This isn't working for me. How do I make this work? So that we found those effective. I also think too, performance measuring, use technology. I mean, what I found with most technology is we're quick to adapt it, but we're very slow to utilize it. So
Right.
we're utilizing CRM, for example. We live on our CRMs. I mean, that's how we communicate. That's how we do but you have to use more than just as a, I'm going to date myself here, just as a Rolodex.
Yeah.
Because it's the data that's in it, not just because you're entering names. What data can you read and glean?
That data should be getting better and quicker to you. So we do the same thing, as you know, with quarterly updates and annual reviews. But the dashboards that we're using for the metrics, we really spent a lot of time this year on trying to modify them so that they're more predictive of the future than they are a historical performance type.
Yeah, Rick, you made a good point. No matter what you're using, the value in the dashboards.
Yeah.
Build dashboards and don't pick 100 key performance indicators.
Yeah.
Pick the top 6 to 10 key performance indicators. You want to walk in every day on your business, open up your laptop or your
And
computer
know what's going on.
and see it right there in front of you.
Well, I knew 30 minutes was not going to be enough for the
we need
three
more
of
time.
you.
We need more. Yeah,
We have several questions that have gone unanswered. We will work on getting those answers out to you in a number of ways. But I do want to thank everyone who joined online. Thank you to the three of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Wipfli.